You've already stood here before. You've felt this kind of moment building in your life before. Small realizations stacking up, a quiet sense that something wasn't sitting right anymore. And last time, you hesitated. Maybe you were scared. You questioned it. You told yourself you needed more time, more clarity, a better moment to act. But maybe this time, it's simpler than that. Maybe you've just had enough. You realized you've been sitting in the same patterns, dealing with the same things, carrying the same weight. And for what? Not because you couldn't leave, not because you didn't see it, but because you kept telling yourself it was fine, until it wasn't. And now you're being placed right in front of it again. Don't miss it. This doesn't feel light anymore. Last time, it felt like something you could think about and come back to later. It stayed in your head. It didn't force a decision. Now it's different. Now it's starting to affect how you move, what you tolerate, what you ignore, what you can't ignore anymore. It's not just a thought, it's starting to shape your actions, even in small ways. And that's why it feels heavier, not because it's harder, but because it's closer. Before, you had the option to stay undecided. You could keep everything the same, and nothing would immediately challenge that. You had space to delay. You don't have that same space now. Because this time, it's not just something you're aware of, it's something that's already starting to shift how you operate. That's what creates the weight. You don't feel pressure when something is far away. You feel it when it's already within reach. What makes this beginning different isn't just what's happening, it's how you're moving through it. There was a time when you could stay in situations longer than you should have. You could ignore certain signs, overthink what you already felt, go back and forth until you lost clarity completely. That's not where you are anymore. Now things register faster. You notice when something is off almost immediately. You don't need weeks or months to understand what's happening. You feel it early, sometimes even before you can explain it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the real shift. It's not that life suddenly became easier or clearer. It's that your tolerance for confusion dropped. You don't sit in things the same way anymore. You don't stretch situations out just to make them work. You don't need more time to understand what you already feel. You just need to trust that you felt it for a reason. That changes everything about how this beginning plays out. Because this time, you're not slowly waking up to what's happening, you're catching it as it unfolds. You're adjusting earlier, stepping back sooner, moving forward without dragging the same weight behind you. And that's why this doesn't feel like the past. Not because the situation is completely different, but because you are. You're not moving blindly anymore, and once that changes, you don't go back to the way you used to move, even if you tried. If you really think back, none of your new beginnings were random. It might have felt chaotic in the moment, but there was always a sequence to how you moved through it, a pattern that repeated itself, even if you never stopped to name it. Maybe at first, there was resistance. You didn't want things to change. You tried to hold on to what felt familiar, even when it was already slipping. Then something shifted. Maybe it was a moment of frustration. Maybe it was a conversation. Maybe it was just a point where you got tired of staying in the same place. But something always broke that initial resistance. After that, there was usually a period where things still felt unclear, but you started moving anyway. Small decisions, small steps, nothing dramatic, but enough to create momentum. And then, at some point, clarity showed up. Not because everything was suddenly perfect, but because you had already started acting. You were already in motion. That's your pattern. It wasn't luck. It wasn't coincidence. It was a process you've gone through more than once. And every time you followed it, whether consciously or not, you made it to the other side. You didn't survive those moments by chance. You survived them by instinct. The difference now is that you can actually see it. You're not just someone who has gone through change. You're someone who knows how they move through it. And once you recognize your own pattern, this stops feeling like something you have to figure out and starts feeling like something you already know how to navigate. There's a part of this process that almost no one prepares you for, and it's usually the part that makes people question everything. Not the beginning, not the breakthrough, but the space in between. The gap. That period where something in your life has clearly shifted, but nothing new has fully formed yet. You're no longer where you used to be, but you're not fully settled into what's next either. It's a strange place to exist in, because from the outside, it can look like nothing is happening. If someone asked you what's changing, you might not even know how to explain it clearly. But internally, it doesn't feel like nothing. It feels slow, sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes confusing in a quiet way. You might catch yourself wondering if you should be doing more, moving faster, figuring things out sooner. There's this subtle pressure to get somewhere, even though you can't fully define where that is yet. That's where most people start to doubt themselves. They assume this pause means they've lost momentum or that they've somehow gone off track. Some people even rush to fill the space with something, anything, just to escape the feeling of being in between. But this phase isn't a mistake, it's part of the design, because what's happening here isn't meant to be visible yet. It's happening internally, in the way you process things, in the way you see situations, in the way you respond without even realizing it. You're recalibrating, even if it doesn't feel like it. Just because your life looks still doesn't mean your mind isn't reorganizing everything. Some of the most important shifts you'll ever go through don't look like progress. They don't come with clear milestones or obvious signs. They look like you sitting with your thoughts longer than usual, like you pulling back from things that don't feel right, like you taking your time instead of forcing clarity. It might even look like you're doing less. But in reality, you're becoming more precise. You're no longer reacting the way you used to. You're no longer jumping into things just to avoid uncertainty. You're allowing space for something more aligned to take shape, even if you don't fully see it yet. And that space can feel uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of control. You can't rush it, you can't force it, and you can't skip it. But it's also where everything starts to come together. Because once you move through this gap properly, without trying to escape it, you don't just step into something new. You step into something that actually fits. And now, it's time for today's comment of the day. Continue to walk in your authenticity, and what is yours will be, and what isn't shall fade away. There's something relieving about that. A lot of pressure comes from trying to control outcomes, making sure things work, making sure people stay, making sure everything aligns perfectly. But this shifts the focus. Just be real. Stay aligned with who you actually are. And let the sorting happen naturally. What's meant to stay won't need to be forced. And what fades was never meant to be held onto forever. Thank you for sharing this. If you really think back, there was a moment in your life where everything shifted in a way you weren't ready for. Not something small or manageable, but something that genuinely caught you off guard. A situation where you didn't have a plan, you didn't have clarity, and you definitely didn't feel equipped to handle what was happening. The kind of moment where it felt like the ground disappeared beneath you, and for a second, you didn't even know where to stand. You didn't have answers, you didn't have a roadmap. There was no clear next step laid out for you. All you had was uncertainty and the pressure to move through it anyway. And yet, you did. Maybe it didn't look impressive at the time. Maybe it felt messy, slow, or even overwhelming. But you made decisions, even when you weren't sure they were the right ones. You took steps forward, even when you couldn't see the full path ahead. You figured things out as you went. That's the part that matters. You didn't wait until you felt ready. You moved, and readiness caught up with you. Every first day you've ever faced felt uncertain in the beginning. There was always a moment where you questioned whether you could handle it, whether you were capable, whether you were about to make a mistake. And every single time, you found your footing. Not because everything suddenly became clear, but because you kept moving long enough for things to start making sense. That's not luck. That's a pattern. Your track record in moments like this isn't random. It's consistent. Every time life forced you into unfamiliar territory, you adapted. Every time something ended and something new began, you found a way to navigate it, even without a clear guide. Your ability to move forward has never depended on having certainty. It's always depended on your willingness to continue without it. And that changes how you should see this moment right now. Because this isn't the first time you've stood at the edge of something new without a clear path. It's just the first time you're aware of the fact that you've already done this before and succeeded every single time. Right before things actually change, something very specific starts happening, and most people misread it completely. You start losing interest in things that used to feel normal to you, and it doesn't happen in a dramatic, obvious way. It's subtle. Conversations that once felt engaging start to feel repetitive, like you've already had them 100 times. Certain routines that used to bring comfort now feel forced, almost like you're playing a role you've outgrown. Even things you genuinely enjoyed don't hit the same anymore. And no matter how much you try to reconnect with them, there's a quiet distance you can't ignore. This is usually where people get confused. They assume something is wrong with them. They think they're becoming unmotivated, disconnected, or that they need to fix whatever this feeling is. Some even try to force themselves back into old habits, hoping the feeling will go away. But it doesn't. Because this isn't something breaking down, it's something being cleared out. Your mind is doing something intelligent here. It's stepping away from what no longer fits, even before you fully understand what's coming next. It's not waiting for a perfect plan or a clear direction. It's making room first. The things that no longer excite you are not meant to be revived. They're meant to be replaced. And that can feel uncomfortable because you're left in this strange position where the old version of your life doesn't fully connect anymore, but the new version hasn't fully taken shape yet. You're not fully attached to what was, but you're not fully anchored in what's next either. That in-between feeling can make it seem like you're losing yourself, but you're not. You're shifting. The version of you that was aligned with those old routines, those dynamics, those ways of thinking, it served its purpose. It got you to this point, but it's not meant to carry you forward anymore. And instead of forcing a sudden dramatic break, this process happens gradually. You start noticing what feels empty before you clearly see what feels right. You begin pulling away before you fully step forward. That's why it feels strange, and that's why it's so easy to misinterpret. But if you step back and really look at it, this isn't a loss of direction. It's preparation for a new one. While you've been focused on what feels uncertain, there are changes already happening in you that are easy to miss if you're only looking for big, obvious signs. They don't show up as dramatic breakthroughs or sudden clarity. They show up in the way you respond to things without even thinking about it. Situations that used to trigger a strong reaction don't affect you the same way anymore. You pause more. You think before you respond. You don't get pulled into the same patterns as easily as you used to. That's not small. That's a shift in how you operate. Even the decisions you make throughout the day are changing in subtle ways. What you choose to engage with, what you ignore, what you give your energy to, it's different now. You might not even realize it in the moment, but if you compare it to how you used to move, the difference is there. And because these changes don't feel dramatic, they're easy to overlook, but they matter more than the obvious ones. Big changes don't begin when your life looks different. They begin when you start responding to life differently. What you're experiencing right now isn't a lack of progress. It's progress happening at a level that doesn't need to announce itself. It's the kind of change that builds quietly, strengthening your foundation before anything visible shifts on the outside. That's why it can feel like nothing is happening, even when everything is. Because by the time something external changes, the internal work has already been done. There's a pattern most people don't notice until they've lived through it a few times. Long stretches where nothing seems to move, followed by a sudden shift that changes everything faster than expected. You can spend weeks, sometimes months, feeling like you're in the same place, thinking the same thoughts, dealing with the same routines, questioning whether anything is actually happening. It feels slow, almost stuck, like you're waiting for something that refuses to arrive. But that stillness is not empty time. It's accumulation. Everything you've been processing, everything you've been reconsidering, every small shift in how you think and respond, it builds quietly. There's no visible result at first, so it's easy to assume nothing is changing until it does. And when it does, it rarely comes gradually. It comes in a way that feels almost abrupt. A decision suddenly feels obvious. An opportunity appears that didn't exist before. A situation that once felt complicated becomes clear in a matter of moments. That's why people often say things changed overnight, even though the truth is that the change had been building for a long time. There's a misconception that once you're ready for something, it should feel natural to step into it. That confidence should be automatic. That clarity should remove all discomfort. But that's not how it works. Even when you're prepared, even when you've grown, even when you understand what's in front of you, starting again still feels unfamiliar. There's still that moment where you don't fully know what you're doing, where things feel slightly awkward, where you're not moving with the same certainty you have in areas you've already mastered. And that feeling is easy to misinterpret. People take that discomfort as a sign they're not ready, or that something is off, or that they should wait until they feel more confident before moving forward. But that's backwards. That discomfort is not a warning. It's confirmation. Growth doesn't feel natural in the moment. It feels unfamiliar because you've never operated at that level before. You're not supposed to feel like an expert at the beginning of something new. You're supposed to feel like you're learning, adjusting, finding your rhythm again. And the difference now is that you've been through this process before. You know that the discomfort doesn't last. You know that what feels unfamiliar now becomes second nature later, but only if you stay in it long enough. The problem is, most people retreat at this exact stage. They step into something new, feel that initial resistance, and interpret it as a sign to go back to what's comfortable. They convince themselves they were more aligned before, when in reality, they were just more familiar with it. There's a difference between something being right for you and something being easy for you. And this new beginning you're stepping into, it's not meant to feel easy at first. It's meant to stretch you just enough to grow into it. So when that discomfort shows up, when things feel slightly off, when you don't have everything figured out, that's not a reason to slow down. That's the moment you keep going, because that's exactly where this starts becoming real. If you're still here, still listening, I genuinely appreciate it. If even one idea in this video stayed with you, if something made you pause or see things a little differently, then this beginning we've been talking about, it's already started. You don't need to rush into it. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Just trust that you're not stepping into this blindly. You're stepping into it with everything you've already lived through behind you. Take it one step at a time, stay honest with yourself, and don't underestimate how far you've already come. Because this time, you're not guessing your way forward. You're walking into something you're actually ready for.